In Part 4 of Negotiation for Entrepreneurs, Holly examines the importance of growing relationships of trust whenever she interacts with others. At a very basic level, a prospective business deal can be expressed in the form of what we call the 5 questions. Are you selling something I want or need? This is part of the package of interests the potential buyer wants to satisfy. Is it any good? Will it do what I need it to do? Is the quality sufficient? Can I afford what you're selling? This is the buyer's interest in doing a deal that is within its means. Can I get a better or cheaper version from someone else? This is the walkaway question. And finally, can I trust you? This question focuses on whether the seller will take care of me, how she tends to the relationship, something we turn to now. We may not explicitly tick through these questions each time we're considering entering into a business relationship, but they're there, and we will be continually scanning the available information for answers to them, sometimes long after we've made an initial deal. But what do we mean by the 5th question? What does it mean to trust someone in a negotiation, and why is a relationship of trust important? A negotiating relationship exists in the minds of those who have the relationship. It's a set of beliefs that includes the question whether the other party can be trusted. It grows over time based on the words and deeds of the parties toward each other. The fact of communicating about a potential deal simultaneously brings a relationship into being. So when Holly contacts the canned goods buyer for a grocery store chain about stocking Holly's Jolly Salsa, both will have many unspoken questions, including whether they can trust each other. As they get better acquainted, each will record impressions and clues they pick up from what the other says and does. For example, if Holly says she'll call back in the afternoon, but doesn't, the buyer will likely record that as an incongruence between what she says and what she does. It raises question marks about her reliability. If the buyer indicates that he might be willing to consider Holly's Jolly Salsa, if Holly sweetens the deal by getting him tickets to an important baseball game, this tells Holly something about the kind of person she's dealing with. All of this exists in the minds of Holly and the buyer. Trust is action based on the belief that a person, thing, or entity can and will perform as expected. A relationship of trust is essential to any extended and ultimately successful negotiation process. So if the grocery store buyer is unsure about whether Holly will deliver on her promises, he will not want to expose himself and his grocery store chain to the risks associated with that lack of trustworthiness. All negotiations take place within a relationship of trust. At the outset, the degree of trust may be small, but over time it can grow, making exceptional agreements possible. Trust has 2 main components: character and competence. Character refers to the reliability of the person or organization involved in the negotiation. Are they honest? Do they play fair? Do they keep their word? And so on. Competency refers to the ability to perform, to deliver the goods, services, or other terms of the deal. No contract officer will want to make a deal with a company that does low-quality work, no matter how nice or honest they are. What we seek in those with whom we do business is trustworthiness along both axes of trust: trustworthy competence and trustworthy character. Both Holly and the grocery store buyer want reassurance that the other is trustworthy on both the competence and the character axes of trust. Each can improve the likelihood of being found trustworthy by all people with whom they deal by diligently practicing the 7 habits of trustworthy behavior, which are based on the 7 core business virtues. Instituting the checklist of trustworthy behavior in an organization is a simple and inexpensive way to build habits of trustworthiness that will serve it well in every negotiation. This checklist is built on the virtues of excellence, honesty, fairness, good manners, promise-keeping, compliance with the law, and avoidance of harm, habits that become ingrained in our behavior over time. The checklist poses each virtue in question form. Is it our best? Is it the truth? Is it fair? Is it polite? Is it what we promised? Is it legal? And have we exercised due care? If we can't answer yes to each question, then we don't think, say, or do it. Let's take a closer look at each one. Is it our best? Do good work. That's the first rule of a trustworthy business. Producing less than the best you can do with the time and resources available should never be acceptable. A business in which subpar work is the norm may get by for a while, but it will never truly thrive, and it won't attract the best people. To earn a reputation as a trustworthy business, therefore, Holly's Jolly Salsa will need to produce the best salsa it can. That doesn't mean, of course, that every business must achieve Rolls-Royce quality. We have to work with the available time and resources, which frequently limit the product or service. And even if we had unlimited money to invest in the production, we must also consider what customers can pay. But within those natural constraints of operating a business, we have an implicit obligation to do the best we can for the people and businesses we serve. We expect nothing less when we're the buyer. We should seek to meet the same standard as the seller. Is it the truth? Perhaps as much as 80% of trust problems in business stem from some form of deception, the failure to be honest, to tell the truth, to operate transparently. This shouldn't surprise us. Even birds and other animals learn to deceive to achieve their goals. Deception is a very robust survival strategy in the world of evolution, and if you're looking only for a quick buck, dishonesty works in business too, for a short while. But dishonest business practices are not sustainable. No business can long endure that cheats its customers and suppliers. Word gets around. On the flip side, if what you say is as pure as the driven snow, customers and suppliers will reward that behavior too. If there's no fakery, no puffery, no embellishment, no exaggeration, no dissembling, not even a hint of falseness in what you do and say, people will catch on, and they will honor your honesty. This one isn't easy. Real truth-telling throughout the business in all ways, shapes, and forms sometimes comes at a price. A lost sale, an irate supervisor who doesn't want to hear the unvarnished truth about why we can't meet the numbers this quarter, a business deal that doesn't happen. But telling the truth clearly to yourself and others is the very essence of corporate integrity. If you want to have a great business, a devotion to the truth is an indispensable virtue. The temptation to shade the truth, to misrepresent, to dissemble, to fudge, to leave false impressions, and in dozens of ways to mislead others, is especially high for entrepreneurs. Holly desperately wants to make a sale to a top grocery store chain. The buyer asks whether she has enough product on hand to ship 20 cases in 2 days. Holly's Jolly Salsa has a production run scheduled, but Holly misrepresents the facts. If something happens to prevent delivery, her reputation could suffer serious damage with the buyer. Is it fair? The craving for fairness is built into our DNA. Scientists often refer to it as the reciprocity principle, the need to exchange good for good and bad for bad. If you do a favor for me, I feel an obligation to return it. And if I violate your rights, you'll have the urge to strike back. In fact, fairness is the basis not just for business, but for life in society overall. We wouldn't survive as groups without it. Social psychologists have demonstrated the power of the reciprocity principle in a wide variety of settings. In business, We can use this basic life principle affirmatively by making sure that we are meticulously fair in all transactions, both within the firm and with outsiders. If we take advantage of others by stealing their ideas, using their efforts without fair compensation, or exploiting a momentary power imbalance, we'll sow the seeds of resentment, bitterness, and ultimately revenge. We may not recognize it when it comes along, but payback happens, often at a cost far greater than the momentary benefit achieved by playing unfairly. But the positive side is true as well. People whom we've treated fairly will be loyal and go out of their way to help us. To create a business with moral integrity, make sure everyone can answer yes to the fairness question in all transactions. Fairness is an important ingredient of the legitimacy element we discussed in Lesson 3. If a buyer learns that Holly unfairly exploited an emergency, the trust she needs will have been damaged. She might be wise not to press every advantage she has in a negotiation. Is it polite? Good manners are fundamental to trustworthy relationships. If we can't be trusted to be on time, pick up after ourselves, return what we borrow, and show others the common courtesies that make civilized society function, how can we be trusted in more serious matters? Edmund Burke, the 18th century Irish statesman, once wrote, "Manners are of more importance than laws. Manners are what vex or soothe, corrupt or purify, exalt or debase, barbarize or refine us, by a constant, steady, uniform, insensible operation, like that of the air we breathe in." Entrepreneurs would do well to learn the 3 magic words because we need them a lot. The first, of course, is please. The second is thank you. And the third, I'm sorry. Is it what we promised? Doing what you say has been part of good business ethics from the beginning. If you give your word, keep it. Like the other parts of baseline goodness for business, promise keeping is not always convenient and may occasionally cost money in the short run. Suppose that Holly promised to deliver 40 cases of salsa at $25 a case based on the assumption that she could buy the tomatoes for $2 a pound. But now she just learned that the tomatoes will cost $2.75 instead. That increase means that she'll lose money delivering the 40 cases at $25. What should she do? Keep her word or try to change the deal? The courts are filled with people who choose expediency over integrity, and the number of damaged business relationships caused by broken promises is even greater. But those companies that have an unbending policy of doing what they said tend to enjoy greater success than the others. If we said we'd do it, we'll do everything in our power to come through. Everyone wants to work with someone who adheres to that principle, someone they can rely on. Is it legal? Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr. wrote that the life of the law has not been logic, but experience. He meant that the particulars of the legal system emerged from the needs of society and our realization that we need this or that rule to keep things working well. The law is one form of social judgment about the right and wrong things to do. In a technology-driven society, the law can be highly complex. Many of the rules are like traffic signs and speed limits. They coordinate behavior but are morally neutral. They don't imply rightness or wrongness. But the basic laws are often codifications of moral judgments that have evolved over centuries. The law is an institutionalized form of respect. As Holly's jolly salsa grows, Holly will frequently be tempted to bend or break the law. Adding non-organic tomatoes to a batch advertised as organic could reduce costs, but would also violate labeling laws. Making cash sales off the books could help her reduce income taxes. Demanding that employees work overtime after they've clocked out increases profitability, but it's also illegal. The pressures on a startup business and the temptation to do something illegal can be enormous. It's best not to. Have we exercised due care? One of the oldest ethical injunctions comes from the Hippocratic Oath, which physicians have taken for over 2,500 years. First, do no harm. When we're considering a course of action, one item on our checklist should be whether it will cause any harm to anyone. It's easy to apply this rule to malicious behavior such as harassment, bullying, and abuse of power. There's no justification for such misconduct. It serves no legitimate interest. But we also have the obligation to think about the effects of our behavior in more subtle ways. There are also numerous instances in which causing harm is unavoidable if we're to reach a particular objective. Firing someone who's unable or unwilling to perform her assigned tasks will possibly cause harm to her or her family. Building a house or an office building or a railroad will inevitably cause harm to trees, animal habitats, and other parts of the environment. The challenge in such cases has always been to devise ways to balance the legitimate interests of those involved and to decide which interests take priority. It's not easy. While it may not be possible to avoid all harm in every instance, it is possible to think about whether harm can be kept to a minimum. We can consider which interests should take priority given the stated values of the organization. We should make the effort. If Holly and other entrepreneurs make the 7 habits of trustworthy people an integral part of how they do business and make deals with others, they will find their trust accounts will serve them well in both the short and long term. In Lesson 5, we'll introduce the final 2 elements of strategic negotiation: walkaway alternatives and commitment. Thanks for watching.